guys, I am back with another video, and in today's video we are talking all about bath bombs. And I know that this type of video is going to be super helpful for all of you because I know that a lot of you have found me through my bath bomb videos, probably this one up here, which is my most watched bath bomb video. But I know that watching those videos and actually making them are two completely separate things. The actual process of making bath bombs is so difficult. You can run into issues literally throughout the whole process, making them, drying them, and then actually using them. But good news, there is a way to fix most of those problems, and that is what this video is all about. So if that's something that you're interested in, keep watching. Hi, my name is Jerika, and I am the owner and creator of Quench, and that is my soap and bath bomb business. And in this channel, I talk all about making my products, selling them, basically all of the ins and outs of how I run my business. If that's something that you're interested in, please subscribe. If you guys are already subscribed, thank you guys so much, and thanks for watching. You guys are so awesome. And now, without further ado, let's get into it. Now, like I mentioned in the intro, bath bombs are so tough. The very nature of a bath bomb is that they react to water, so that just makes everything that much more complicated. You can't have too much, you can't have too little, things have to be just right. But don't let that discourage you. There are ways to help the bath bomb get there. Don't you worry. And in this video, we will walk through all of the ways that you can take the power back and actually make that bath bomb the most perfect bath bomb that it could be. The issues in this video are going to be broken down into three main parts. One of them are issues that you'll encounter making them, issues that you will encounter drying them, and issues that you will encounter when actually using them. Hopefully this video will help you navigate and troubleshoot all of the issues that you'll encounter and make you guys better bath bomb makers. So the first set of issues are really frustrating because that is the issues you will encounter in actually making them. And it's so frustrating to gather all of your ingredients, get everything together, you've set aside this time to finally get going on making your bath bombs, only for it to just not go right. And actually, to this day, I still encounter issues. The thing about bath bombs, like I mentioned before, is that they are so reactive to water. The very nature of them is that you throw them in the tub and they explode. And while that's fun for bath time, in actually making them, that just leaves them super vulnerable for things to go wrong. So the first issue you might encounter in making them is that they won't adhere together, and this actually happened to me a couple of days ago. I was making my bath bombs and I had made the observation that last winter I was able to make them fine without much issue, and I concluded that it was because I had my heater running in the background, which dried out the air. So I thought, since we are now in winter and we have our heater going, I wouldn't have any of those issues. So I didn't use my dehumidifier and was completely confident that things will be fine. Well, when I started making them in my bath bomb press, I would press them and they just wouldn't stick together. And as a bath bomb maker who's been making perfect bath bombs all year, this is really jarring and frustrating to encounter because it's the same recipe, same process, what's happening? And then a light bulb went on in my head. My dehumidifier wasn't on, so I had to actually go over to the dehumidifier, turn it on, and literally it was like night and day. The bath bomb started to press normally again, things started to adhere together, everything was fine. So the lesson here is you really want to control your humidity. Bath bombs are the happiest at 40% humidity, and the way you can control that is through a dehumidifier like what I have, or if your environment is super dry, you can use a humidifier, which will introduce moisture into the air. So around 40% is ideal. So in that particular case, when bath bombs don't adhere together, the mix is just too wet, there's too much moisture in the air, and the solution to that is you turn on your dehumidifier if you have one, or you wait a little bit for it to dry out a little bit. I would say that 80% of bath bomb issues has to do with humidity. So if you get your humidity at that ideal percentage, making bath bombs will be a lot easier for you. So that is my first tip in making bath bombs, get the humidity right. Related to humidity, the second issue you will encounter when making bath bombs is that your mix is too wet. When you're making your bath bombs, you're looking for an ideal texture to your bath bomb mix. It has to feel like damp sand. Not too wet and not too damp, but just slightly damp sand. And a way to know that is once you've mixed everything together, you will take a bit in your hand, crush it, and see if it holds its shape. And then once you touch it a little bit, it breaks apart. And that is the exact texture you're looking for. When working with a bath bomb press, you actually want your bath bombs on the drier side, so it's always good to be really careful with the amount of water you're putting into your bath bomb mix. A way that I control the amount of water that's going into my mix is that I add a few grams of water to the baking soda, and then I use my mixer to just continually be mixing it the entire time. The ingredient that's most reactive to water is the citric acid. And so in order for the mix to not begin reacting right away, I combine all of the wet ingredients together at once, and then I add that in to my baking soda before I add the citric acid. I add my citric acid at the very, very end, and the reason why I do that is because by the time I add my citric acid, all of my wet ingredients are already... By the time I add my citric acid, all of my wet ingredients are fully incorporated into my baking soda, so there's no immediate reaction when I add my citric acid to the rest of the mix. So a big tip for controlling the moisture when it comes to making bath bombs is to just add all of your wet ingredients before you add your citric acid, and add your citric acid at the very, very end. Another issue you might encounter when you're making your bath bombs is that the colors are too dull. Now, when I make my bath bombs, I use water-soluble dyes, and these are very concentrated colors that you can use in your bath bombs. And once you throw them into the water, they make the most beautiful water art ever. I found in using these dyes, the more you use, the better. So if when you're using them, you're not getting the vibrant color, add a little bit more. Another tip to get them super, super vibrant is to add a little bit of very hot water to the bath bomb dye before you add it to your baking soda. And you can really adjust how bright or how not bright you want your color just by using a little bit or a lot. And you can see through my lavender and grape bath bombs, both use amethyst dye, but the difference in color is due to the fact that I don't use as much in the lavender and I use a lot more for my grape. I also add hot water to the dye that I use in the grape bath bombs to get that really vibrant purple color. So the next stage of issues that you will probably run into is in drying the bath bombs themselves. Again, a lot of these issues can be controlled by simply putting them in a place where the humidity is at around 40%, so a room where you have a dehumidifier constantly going, away from sunlight, just a cool, dark place where they can rest and dry. That will probably be the best environment for them when they're drying. But even then, you will still encounter some issues. Flat bottoms. In drying your bath bombs, you might find that gravity will cause the mix to come down and it will flatten the bottom of your bath bomb. A quick way to prevent that is to have them dry in the molds themselves, or in my case, I have the bath bomb trays that I get from the bath bomb press, and those round cavities allow my bath bombs to dry and get that rounded bottom. If you are drying them in stainless steel molds, another issue you might encounter is that they get stuck in those molds. When I was doing it that way, when I was drying them in the stainless steel molds, one thing I did to prevent that was I would come back to them every hour and flip them around. I would make sure that they weren't sitting in those molds for too long. I would kind of rotate them, because the reason why they get stuck is that they're just sitting in that stainless steel mold for too long, and the mix actually does get pretty stuck to those molds. So rotating them helps keep them loose, and hopefully by the next day they won't be completely stuck to the molds. That's why I really like the bath bomb press trays, because the trays are actually non-stick. I can just pop them out the next day and hasn't been any issues with them sticking in there. The next issue is your bath bombs are cracked, or they're too powdery, or they're too dry. So if this happens, it's probably because you didn't have enough binder in your mix when you first made it. In making bath bombs, choosing the right binder is so important, and in my recipe, I use water and alcohol. I mentioned before I use water to dampen the baking soda in the beginning, and then I add a few spritz of water nearer to the end before I mold them together to help moisten the mix. If you're finding that the next day the bath bombs are cracked or too dry, that's an indication that in that process you need to raise up the amount of water or alcohol, or even witch hazel from what I hear some people use in their recipes, or even bump up the amount of oil that you use in your recipes. In my recipe, I use shea butter and hemp seed oil, but I have found that having oils in a bath bomb really help to keep the bath bomb from cracking or being too dry when I come back to them the next day. On the opposite end of that, you come back to your bath bombs and they're not even close to being dry. They're too wet. When this happens, obviously the issue is you have too much water, too much binder in your mix, or you've added too much oil. When making bath bombs, ideally they should be rock hard. You should be able to roll them around and them not crumbling or getting squished. So it's super important to get this part right. So when it's not drying or it's too soft, one of the things you need to do is to cut down on the oil a little bit. In my recipe, I only use 0.4%, so you don't need too much oil in the first place. but using too much can definitely cause the mix to be too wet. And a tip I have is actually using a hard butter in your recipe. We use shea butter. If you choose a butter or an oil that's solid at room temperature, it really helps the bath bomb keep its shape. Another really important ingredient that contributes to the hardness of a bath bomb is cream of tartar. Before I used it, I found my bath bombs were super crumbly and weren't as hard as I would like them to be. Once I added cream of tartar, that really solved a lot of my issues, and I felt that my bath bombs were a lot smoother because of it. And I think it has to do with the fact that cream of tartar is super dense and it's really fine. So that property in itself, I think, helps to fill in any nooks and crannies at the micro level that the bath bomb might have, resulting in a much harder, more durable bath bomb. And another big tip that I have when it comes to preventing bath bombs that are too soft or too wet is to not use Epsom salt or salt in general. Salt in itself draws moisture to itself, so that is not good for a bath bomb. I know that there are recipes out there that do use Epsom salt, but for me, they just never worked. My very first recipe had Epsom salt in it, and bath bombs did not do great. They were too soft, they were too crumbly, they just did not like it. So if you're finding that your recipe is crumbly, too soft, won't dry, look at Epsom salts and maybe take them out of your recipe. Another issue you might see when drying them is that the bath bombs will develop these weird bumps or warts. And this isn't too bad of an issue, and I still get this issue to this day. I don't really stress out too much about it because to me, they don't really hinder the performance of the bath bomb at all. It just kind of looks a little funny. And the reason why you're getting warts is humidity. There's too much humidity in the air and it's making your bath bomb react. So one of the first things you want to do is to have them dry in a room where humidity is ideally at 40%, or when you're making them, make sure that the humidity is at the ideal level. Another thing that causes warts in bath bombs is that your water that you've added, probably at the stage where you've added your citric acid and you're just adding moisture back into the batch, that water hasn't incorporated properly into your mix. So you have pockets of water. And that is causing micro activation in your bath bomb, causing the wart. So a way to prevent that is to make sure that you're mixing your mix thoroughly. You guys know that I use a KitchenAid mixer, so even a mixer like that, I still get warts. So I don't stress too hard about it. When I first start making bath bombs, at the very beginning, I turn on my dehumidifier, but I find that even if I turn on the dehumidifier and start making bath bombs too soon, the first batch of bath bombs will develop those warts, and by the end, and as more time has gone by and the level of humidity has gone down to an ideal percentage, the next batch will be perfectly fine. And you can see that here. I made lavender bath bombs and grape bath bombs, and you can see with the lavender bath bombs, they developed the warts, and that's because I hadn't had the dehumidifier running long enough. But by the time I started making the grape bath bombs, humidity was great, they didn't develop the warts, and everything was fine. After all of that, the whole trial of actually making them and then getting through the next day, seeing if they've made it through the night and everything is fine, after all of that, there still could be issues, sadly. So when using a bath bomb, there is an ideal performance that I, as a bath bomb maker, look for, and I know not every bath bomb maker is anal about this, but for me, I really want my bath bombs to float, and I really want them to last for a while. So these two factors in making bath bombs are so important to me. The reason being is a bath bomb that floats is able to distribute that beautiful color so much better than a bath bomb that's sunk. The reason why it's able to happen is because the bath bomb itself is floating to the top and it's able to throw the colors all over the surface of the water. So if the bath bomb is floating, it also is able to disperse the scent so much better than a bath bomb that's sunk to the bottom. So a big factor for me when I make them is they've got to float. So if you find that your bath bombs are sinking, it's an indication that you have packed your bath bombs way too tightly. My technique when I pack bath bombs, whether it's the bath bomb press or I'm using the stainless steel molds, is to never pack it down. I just kind of pile it in, I wouldn't say lightly, but just kind of pile it in and let it naturally sink down on its own. And I find in doing that causes natural pockets that allow my bath bombs to float. So when you're piling in the bath bomb mix lightly, when you have the two stainless steel molds, the technique is to overfill them and make sure there's a bit of a hill at the top, and then you squish them together, and then that should be enough to create a floating bath bomb. Other techniques that I've heard is poking holes while you're piling the mix in, and that probably helps too. I think I did that as well. And the embeds that I add are kind of funky shaped, and I know that when I put them in, they add little pockets of air in my bath bomb. So definitely helps huge in getting your bath bombs to float. Another thing you need to look at if your bath bombs are sinking is using a lot of hard oil. Hard oils like cocoa butter or even shea butter, too much of it can cause your bath bomb to just be too heavy and it'll sink even if there are air pockets in it. So control the amount of hard oils that you have in your recipe, and that should help out with your bath bomb being able to float. Another issue is having the bath bombs not last long enough or they last too long. And you can actually control this. And I discovered this when I was playing around with different recipes and different ingredient ratios. I realized that if you have a lot of citric acid, it actually makes your bath bomb fizz faster. So you can actually control the level of fizz through your citric acid. But a way to counteract that is to include a surfactant, like in my case we use SLSA, and this foaming agent and foaming action actually counteracts the fizz. So finding the right balance between these two ingredients can go a long way in controlling how long your bath bomb lasts. So I briefly talked about the bath bomb dyes in the section about making the bath bombs. Now, when you're actually using the bath bombs, this can actually affect how the color is dispersed in the tub as well. The more bath bomb dye you use, the more vibrant and the more colorful everything will be. That's a given. But you definitely want to control the amount. You don't want to use too much because these dyes can actually stain and you want to prevent that. Testing is definitely key when finding out the right amount. I have only used water-soluble dyes when it comes to coloring my bath bombs, so that's my only experience. I do know that using mica to color your bath bombs won't produce the very bright, beautiful colors that you see in some bath art. If you want really vibrant bath art, then use water-soluble dyes or lakes. Adhere lakes are really good as well. I never use them, so I can't really speak to them, but what I use is the water-soluble dyes, and my supplier is listed in the description below. Another issue you might encounter related to color is getting a ring of color stuck to the perimeter of your bathtub. And this is probably caused by a few things. Number one, you are not using polysorbate 80. And polysorbate 80 is an ingredient that allows water and oil to blend together. So the reason why I add them to my bath bombs is so that the oils that are in my bath bombs don't sit at the very top of the water. We all know oil and water doesn't mix, so without an emulsifier like polysorbate 80, they're just going to separate and be at the very top. So once you drain that tub, that level of oil will remain, and it's actually not a great experience for your customer, so I do recommend using polysorbate 80 if you want to prevent that. Also, if you have oil sitting at the very top of your water, when you drain that bathtub, you will get a very slippery tub, which could be dangerous for your customer as well, so there's that to consider. And another way to prevent that ring of color around your tub is to use the water-soluble dyes. The water-soluble dyes that I use, they go right down the drain, no issues, they do not stain your tub, so that's a big reason why I use them. It provides the best customer experience while providing that really nice bright pop of color. So that is it. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I'm really excited that you guys get to finally see a demo of how my bath bombs work in the water, and I really want to add more demos of my other bath bombs in the future, so stay tuned for that. Making bath bombs is such a stressful process when you're first starting out because there's just so much that can go wrong. The good news is if you continue to practice, you'll start to get a sense for the amount of water you should be using, and you'll start to develop an instinct that will prevent you from adding too much water. Don't worry, don't give up. If you keep practicing, I promise you it will get easier with time and you will develop the most beautiful bath bombs. Stick with it because people love bath bombs, and if you are a soap company, adding these bath bombs to your line is one of the smartest things you can do because they are some of my best sellers, and I'm so glad I stuck with it even when I was struggling with it. So if you apply these fixes to your issues, let me know in the comments below. If there's any issues that I've missed, please mention them also in the comments so that I can maybe make a follow-up to this video to talk about anything that I forgot to mention or touch upon. If this did help you or you enjoyed it, leave a thumbs up, subscribe, and for all my subscribers, thank you guys so much. You guys are awesome. Continue smiling, continue hustling, and continue growing. I will see you in the next one. Bye guys.